Hey guys, welcome back to another Metal Fan Reacts video with me, Draven. Thank you so much for tuning in. As I mentioned, every Saturday and Sunday is going to be dedicated to Sabaton History Channel reactions. And yesterday, I made the video up about Flanders Fields, and I asked you guys in the comment section to make the suggestion of what you want to see next. A couple of you guys had different comments, but one song or one episode was requested the most. It got requested 9 times at the course of all my YouTube channels. So of course I'm going to do it. I know next week I'm going to do a series that's a part 1, part 2. But for today we're going to be doing the Winter War Sabaton History episode 6. This is of course the Talvisota. I'm saying that incorrectly, but I do apologize. So let's jump right into the video. Like I mentioned in my last video, I have a new mic. Let me know if the sound is good, if it's perfect, if it's better, thoughts on that. And of course, as always, I do have my Patreon site and my website in the description below, as well as my Twitch sites and all my social media accounts if you guys want to follow me there. So without further ado, let's jump into the Winter War Sabaton History episode 6.
I'm Indy Nidell.
And I'm Joakim from Sabaton, and this is Sabaton History.
Indy Nidell. I like this guy's voice.
The Soviet Red Army invaded Finland in late 1939 and the Winter War had begun. The Soviets thought the war would be over in a matter of weeks, if not days, but they were wrong, as the Finnish defenders surprised the world with their tenacity.
And our song Talvisota is a tribute to Finnish sisu.
International observers had a hard time finding a war that seemed more one-sided. The military might of the Soviet Union versus little Finland with a population of some 3.65 million, without modern equipment, without tanks or even allies.
Sorry, with these History Channel videos, they're long, so I do my best not to pause them because then it makes my videos super long. But with a country's population of only 3.9 million, I'm sure it's a little bit more now. But just to give you an idea of how, in my mind, like how small that is. If you guys are in Europe, maybe you guys, that might be a larger country. But here in the United States, California, the West Coast city of California, where I'm originally from, one of the biggest cities in California is Los Angeles, which is in Southern California. That has almost 10 million people in just that city. And that's just one city of the entire state of California. Give you another idea of how, where I live now in Idaho. I live in Idaho, where the entire state is less than 600,000 people. So it's crazy to think that a city only has, or an entire country only has 3 million people in it.
The Finnish seemed doomed from the start as Soviet troops crossed the border November 30th, 1939, starting what the Finns called Talvisota, Winter War. Finland had a troubled history with Russia. Its declaration of independence from the Russian Empire in December 1917 led to a brutal civil war between the right-wing whites and Bolshevik Reds. This was also a cultural war in which the Finnish nationalistic elements fought against the supporters of Russian influence. This resentment lingered in the Finnish conscience well into the late 1930s, when war again loomed across the European continent. There were plenty of people who believed that the antagonistic ideologies of Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union would eventually lead to war between the two, and that Finland may play a role in that future war. In the event of such a war, Joseph Stalin was concerned, since the Finnish border was not even 30 kilometers away from Leningrad, and the Finnish batteries in the Gulf of Finland could threaten Soviet shipping in the Baltic Sea. Now, during the Great War, some Finns had quite close contact with the Germans, and there was even a Finnish Jaeger battalion that saw action with the German army. Stalin saw this possible connection as a real threat, even as the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact went into effect in the wake of German and Soviet invasions of Poland. They partitioned Poland, and no buffer state between the two powers any longer existed. So Stalin secured a military presence in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania just in case. Finland, who declared itself neutral, was next. Soviet Foreign Minister Vyacheslav Molotov presented demands to the Finns that included moving the border further away from Leningrad, which would also involve the Finns giving up their entire defensive line against the Soviets, and the Finns having to relocate up to 10% of their population, leasing the Soviets Hanko Peninsula to use as a military base, and giving them the Rybaki Peninsula, which Stalin wanted for the nickel mines up there. I talked about all of this week by week on my World War II channel, where you can get all of the details. But long story short, the Finns said, no way, and the Red Army invaded Finland at points along the entire border. Winter had already begun, and it would become one of the coldest in recorded history. Baron Field Marshal Carl Gustav Emil Mannerheim came out of retirement to take overall command of the Finnish army and knew that the key to the defense of Finland was the Karelian Isthmus, the narrow strip of land between the Gulf of Finland and Lake Ladoga. Since 1932, they had prepared strong lines of defense there between the lakes and marshes, the defenses I mentioned earlier, which the Russian troops now had to attack head on. The boggy ground was no good for Soviet tanks and artillery to cross, and the areas they could cross had been extensively mined by the Finns. The Finnish army was small, yet was strongly motivated by patriotic fervor. They could mobilize maybe a little over 300,000 men, and were equipped with only outdated artillery and machine guns, with the exception of the Finnish-made Suomi submachine gun that was a serious weapon. The Russians, for their part, did not even bother to send their best troops, using just what was available in the Leningrad region. Even so, against such a small nation, Stalin wanted only a quick war and ordered General Kirill Meretskov, the commander of the Leningrad military district, to conquer Finland in a few weeks. Meretskov planned to do it by Stalin's birthday, December 21st, and yes, I'm aware that that date is slightly disputed.
Why is it disputed? Let me know in the comment section, why is that disputed? It's one thing too that I'm just blown away of, that at the beginning of World War II, Russia and Hitler had a semi-understanding, and almost as if they were going to ally together, and thankfully they didn't, because I am very curious what would have happened if Russia was fighting with Italy and Germany in World War II. I'm just very curious of how that would happen. I think I just caught that. No, I didn't. Anyways, still very curious of how that would have transpired.
Meretskov would make a two-pronged attack to break the Mannerheim defense line. One force heading straight over the Karelian Isthmus, and another force making a wide swing around Lake Ladoga to outflank the Finnish. In the far north, beyond Lake Ladoga, the Soviet forces marched into nightmarish conditions. They were neither equipped nor trained to fight in the Arctic climate. They were not even camouflaged for the snow, nor were their tanks. The terrain was some of the densest forests in the entire world, with snowdrifts between the trees deeper than a man standing. The area lacked adequate infrastructure, and the troops were confined to the roads, which they had to follow in long columns. They were perfect targets for Finnish ambushes. Small platoons of Finns on skis or snowshoes wearing winter camouflage constantly harassed the Soviet troops, raided their supply columns, and operated behind the lines. The Soviet command structure at this time had political commissars issuing orders, and not just military men, which made it very unwieldy, and the troops had been ordered not to withdraw no matter what. This led to the soldiers being isolated by the Finns into small pockets in a hostile territory. The Finns called the pockets mohtis, the word for stacked firewood, like how the Soviet soldiers were huddled together in defensive positions in freezing temperatures with barely any food through the long nights of northern Finland. Mohti techniques were snipers and mortar teams harassing the trapped soldiers and depriving them of sleep, while stragglers, firewood gatherers, and supply columns were picked off one by one. Slowly but steadily, those mohtis shrunk as the Russian soldiers starved or froze to death until they were weak enough for assault companies to finish them off. This had the added bonus of preserving ammunition, salvaging the Russian weapons, and winning without costly direct engagement.
That's gnarly. That's really smart. That's so gnarly.
The Finnish defenses of the Mannerheim line were strong, and that, together with the knowledge of the terrain and with having skilled NCOs trained in small group tactics, they could outmaneuver the Soviets, even heavily outnumbered. But they still lacked adequate weapons, especially weapons to deal with the Soviet tanks. One way was to sneak up to a tank and throw an explosive cocktail of gasoline, kerosene, and tar at it, hoping to ignite the machinery. They named it the Molotov cocktail after the Soviet foreign minister.
Huh.
He had said that the Soviet bombers would only drop food supplies, not bombs. When bombs were, in fact, dropped, they were called Molotov bread baskets.
Huh.
Molotov cocktails had, in fact, been used earlier in the Spanish Civil War, but it was here they got their name. Finnish humor did indeed spoil Russian hopes for a quick victory. Soviet high command grew frustrated with the lack of progress, but this came to a large degree from insufficient skills in organization and coordination between the Russian forces. Even though they had a big advantage in armor, artillery, and aircraft, they could not combine arms efficiently. The more mobile Finns could thus react to each threat separately and concentrate their small forces on where the Soviets attacked next. Throughout December 1939, the Finns consistently and devastatingly defeated the Red Army. But in the long run, they could not hope to beat the entire USSR's military. Help from other nations was often promised but rarely delivered, though volunteers from all around the world arrived and in many cases fought. With Semyon Timoshenko and Georgy Zhukov now in charge as 1940 began, the Red Army underwent a period of retraining for winter war and using combined operations. By mid-February, the Mannerheim line was broken, and in the early hours of March 13, 1940, Finland and the USSR signed the treaty that ended Talvisota.
Huh. That's still so gnarly. Is that a Mickey Mouse? There's no way. Wait. Yeah, no. It could have been a Mickey Mouse.
The Soviets gained all the concessions they had asked for and more, but at what cost? The Finns had lost some 25,000 killed and maybe another 50,000 wounded, over 2% of their population in just 105 days. But the Soviets had taken over 200,000 casualties according to their own estimate, but they may have had as many as 250,000 men killed, not even counting the wounded. The Winter War was a serious blow to Soviet pride, and the outside world now believed the USSR to be just a paper tiger. This would heavily influence Hitler's decision to soon wage war against the Soviets, and would also influence Finland's decision to fight on Germany's side in the continuation war. Britain and France had so cynically tried to prolong the Winter War for their own agenda, having an excuse to land troops in Norway to prevent iron supplies to Germany, and yet not providing real assistance at all, that Finland lost all trust in the Allies.
Huh.
They had truly fought, and for a time beat badly, one of the mightiest nations on earth, with an army that in many ways was just homemade.
That's kind of crazy to think about.
Now, you mentioned Sisu at the beginning.
Yes.
What is Sisu?
Well, I guess it's a mentality Finns have, resilience, hardiness, and it's quite impressive, actually.
Well, I mean, you cannot fault them for their bravery in the Winter War.
Absolutely
Nobody can do that. And that's interesting, because Finland, you know, their national character, I mean, everything's a generalization, but that Sisu mentality, and there's also the heavy metal thing, too.
Yeah, actually, one of the few places in the world where heavy metal is not a small subgenre, you know?
It's not the extra thing that the
No.
listen
I
to.
mean, there are metal bands, Finnish metal bands, that will whip Madonna off the charts, you know, if they release an album.
That's pretty cool. So all you metal bands out there in the world, go to Finland.
Yeah, get your asses over there.
But you guys, how often do you guys play in Finland?
Not enough.
Yeah, it's so close to Sweden.
Yeah, and it took us a while to get there as well. I mean, I think we'd been going on for like 8 or 9 years as a band before we actually made it to Finland.
Wow.
Which is kind of weird because we'd
Wow.
been, you know, all over Europe at that point. But
And
not to
the
Finland.
boat to Finland is so easy.
Yeah.
Well, that's the first time that we really hung out after the planning session was on
on the boat
to Finland.
Yes,
Yeah.
on the boat to Finland.
Like John F. Kennedy comes back, here's a gun, look, take it to you, take it to you, man.
On the boat to Finland, they serve a lot of cocktails.
Oh, yes, they do.
Now, you have a special cocktail.
Yes, a very, very special one. One served for Mr. Molotov, actually.
One of the actual original Molotov cocktails from the Winter War.
Yes.
That was not exploded or
It
something.
was made from these Jalovina bottles.
I think that's fantastic. Wow. With the whole
Yeah, we have a
blender.
lot of stuff like that in our rehearsal space. I guess we'll bring it for the show sometime, some stuff.
That'd be cool. I have to see these guys live. Hopefully
Talvisota,
soon.
The Winter War, is on the album The Art of War.
And that's all for today, my friends.
But we will see you next time on Sabaton History.
That looks so cool. Yeah, like I was mentioning, I definitely want to
All right, everyone, that's it for today. But right now, I want to ask you a few things. okay?
patrons.
Please subscribe to Sabaton History, the regular Sabaton channel, of course, but
Already
also
have.
check out
Already
World
have.
War II and Time Ghost, all right?
Okay.
Right here, you got some videos, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. So anyways, so that was a lot of great information about the song, and I really love the fact that they dive so much into the song meanings, and they're able to pull so much history out of them that it's really quite remarkable how they're able to spin these historical events, make them to a song that we could all talk about and we could easily understand. I think that's one thing that's really hard for a lot of students is not they just don't understand what's going on. You can tell them all day, but just something just doesn't register as much as it is with when Sabaton sings it. So I think that's absolutely amazing and fantastic, and I really desperately want to see them live. So hopefully once all this stay home order is over and we're able to travel again, I'm definitely going to do everything I can to travel to see Sabaton, because I think it'd be absolutely amazing to go see them live. Either ways, guys, thank you again so much for tuning in. This is coming out today on Sunday. I'm not too sure if I'll have a video tomorrow, but I'll definitely have one Tuesday, and I'll definitely have one Thursday. All week this week, I'll be streaming onto twitch.tv/Draven, playing some video games. If you guys hit that follow button for here, you just hit that subscribe button for YouTube and that follow button for Twitch. You'll see when I go live. It's like 8 hours a day or something like that. My schedule is on the page, so just go check that out. Of course, my Patreon site, my website is in the description below. Thank you guys again. We are at 800 subscribers, or at 799 subscribers. So thank you guys again for helping us hit that mark. My goal, of course, is 1,000 subscribers by the end of the month. So thank you guys again. I appreciate you all. You have to have a wonderful day. Great weekend. Wash your hands. Peace.